I still remember the first time I saw her. It was the first day of high school. One of those mornings where the air feels charged with both excitement and dread. My stomach was in knots, my palms clammy as I clutched the straps of my backpack like they were the only thing holding me together. I scanned the crowded hallway, faces I didn't know rushing past me, laughter echoing off the lockers. Everyone seemed to have found their place already, like pieces of a puzzle snapping into place. Everyone but me. And then there she was, Claire. She had this effortless presence, as if the world bent slightly in her direction without her even trying. Her hair fell in soft waves that caught the fluorescent light, and when she laughed, it wasn't just a sound, it was an invitation. People turned to her instinctively, orbiting her warmth. I should have felt intimidated, but instead, I felt drawn in. I was standing awkwardly near my locker when she noticed me. New too? She asked, tilting her head with a grin that was both mischievous and kind. I nodded. My voice caught somewhere between my throat and my fear. Yeah, it shows, doesn't it? She laughed, not cruelly, but like I had said something clever. Don't worry, you'll survive. Stick with me. That was the first promise she ever made me. And God, did I believe her? From that day on, we were inseparable. We ate lunch together under the same oak tree in the schoolyard, trading sandwiches and secrets. We stayed up late on the phone, whispering about crushes, dreams, the kind of future we couldn't yet imagine, but were sure we'd conquer together. Claire had a way of making me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible. When I doubted myself, she'd lean across the cafeteria table, her eyes fierce, and say, "You don't see it yet, but you're special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And I wanted to believe her so badly that I did. There was also Mark. We met him a few weeks later in history class. He was quiet at first, one of those boys who seemed to prefer the back row and a sketchbook to conversations. But Claire had this habit of pulling people in like gravity. And soon, he was sitting with us at lunch, rolling his eyes at her dramatic retellings of the day, while I laughed harder than I should have. Mark had this gentle honesty about him. Where Claire was fire, unpredictable, and bright, Mark was water, steady, calm, always reflecting more than he let on. Sometimes, I caught him looking at me in a way that made my chest tighten, though I never dared to acknowledge it out loud. "Don't you think it's strange?" Mark asked once, as we sat under the oak tree. Claire sprawled across the grass beside us. "What?" I asked. He smirked. "That somehow the three of us just fit, like it was supposed to happen." Claire sat up and threw a leaf at him. "Don't get all philosophical, Mark. You'll ruin the moment." But I smiled, because deep down I felt it too. We were a trio, a small universe bound together by some invisible thread. The years passed, and our bond only grew stronger. Claire and I became each other's shadows. Where she went, I followed. Where I stumbled, she lifted me up. We shared clothes. We finished each other's sentences. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. And yet, even in those early days, there were moments, tiny, fleeting, when something in her eyes unsettled me. A sharpness, a flicker of envy when I mentioned a small success, like getting an A on a test or a compliment from a teacher. I told myself I was imagining it. Friends don't envy friends, right? I brushed it aside, because that's what you do when you love someone. You silence the doubts, you bury the discomfort, and you focus on the laughter, the good, the countless memories you'd rather protect than question. There was one night I'll never forget. It was sophomore year, and the three of us had gathered in my room after my parents went to bed. Fairy lights glowed softly against the walls. Music played low from my old stereo, and we sat cross legged on the floor with a half empty bag of chips between us. Promise me something, Claire said suddenly, her voice unusually serious. We both looked at her. Promise me that no matter what happens, the three of us will never fall apart. People come and go, but we're forever. Her eyes shone as she said it, and in that moment, I believed her more than anything I had ever believed in my life. I promise, I whispered. Me too, Mark added, nodding. We'd sealed it with a pinky swear, like children clinging to magic. I felt safe, anchored, certain that with them by my side, I could survive anything. Looking back now, I wonder if she meant it, or if those words were already hollow when they left her lips. But at the time, Claire was my sister, my other half, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could convince me she would ever hurt me. I remember the smell of her vanilla perfume lingering on my sweaters after she borrowed them, the sound of her laughter echoing through the mall as we tried on clothes we couldn't afford, the way her hand squeezed mine under the table when I was nervous, as if to remind me, you're not alone. I built my life on that belief, on her. And that is why what came later shattered me so completely. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from your enemies, it comes from the person you trusted most, the one you swore was family, the one who laughed with you while secretly plotting your ruin. But the cracks don't show all at once. They creep in slowly, disguised as jokes, whispers, and shadows you tell yourself not to notice. And with Claire, the first signs of doubt was so subtle. I almost convinced myself they weren't there at all. They say hindsight is 2020, that once you've lived through the storm, you can trace every drop of rain that warned you it was coming. At the time, though, I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. The first signs came small, almost invisible, like cracks in glass you only notice when the light hits them just right. It started with little comments from Claire. Back then, we were juniors. I had just been chosen to present at the school's debate competition. It wasn't a big deal to most people, but for me, it was huge. I was shy, awkward, the kind of girl who kept her thoughts folded neatly inside notebooks. Standing on a stage terrified me. And yet, I wanted to do it, needed to do it, because it was one of those moments where you feel like you can finally prove to yourself you're more than what people see. I remember running up to Claire at her locker, breathless, holding the acceptance letter like it was gold. They picked me, I said, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. I get to represent our school in the regionals. For a split second, I saw pride in her eyes. But it faded, fast, replaced by something else, something sharp. That's great, she said, shutting her locker with a little too much force. I laughed nervously. You don't sound excited. I am. I just. She shrugged, looking me over. You're not really the debate type, you know? But hey, surprise us. Her words stung more than I admitted at the time. I told myself she was just teasing. Claire teased everyone. But the way she said it, the way her eyes lingered on me, as if questioning whether I really deserved it, it made my chest tighten. Mark noticed it too. A few days later, we were studying together in the library, history books spread between us. He glanced up, lowering his voice. Don't let her get to you. I frowned. What do you mean? He leaned back, arms crossed. Claire, the way she talks sometimes. Like she's on your side, but not really. I shook my head quickly. No, no, she's just joking. That's how she is. Mark raised an eyebrow. If it hurts, it's not a joke. His words stuck with me, though I didn't want them to. I defended her. Of course I did. Claire was my best friend. She'd been there for me when no one else was. Surely she wasn't trying to hurt me. But late at night, lying in bed, I replayed her voice in my head. You're not really the debate type. And a small, quiet voice inside me whispered, maybe she doesn't want you to shine. The weeks went on, and the pattern grew clearer. If I got attention, Claire found a way to dim it. If someone complimented my work, she'd roll her eyes and make a side comment, always just loud enough for me to hear. Once, at lunch, another student came up to congratulate me on my speech. Before I could even say thank you, Claire laughed and said, You should have seen her last week. She was so nervous she nearly fainted. Everyone laughed, and I laughed too, pretending it was funny. But inside, I felt exposed, small. Mark shot me a look across the table, his jaw tight. Later, when it was just the two of us, he muttered, She shouldn't talk about you like that. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But deep down, I knew he wasn't. Still, I clung to her. Because friendship, real friendship, doesn't just vanish over a few hurt feelings. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Besides, there were good days too. Days when Claire was still the girl who made me laugh until my stomach ached, who held my hand when I cried over silly heartbreaks. Those days convinced me the doubts were in my head, that maybe I was too sensitive, too needy. But the truth is, love, whether in friendship or romance, can blind you. And I was blind. Then came the night of the regionals. I can still feel the adrenaline pounding through my veins as I stood on that stage, the spotlight hot against my skin. My voice shook at first, but then it found its rhythm, and for the first time I felt powerful, seen, alive. When it was over, the applause was like a wave crashing over me. I scanned the audience, searching for Claire, and there she was, smiling, clapping. But her eyes were cold, detached. Afterward, as we walked out, Mark clapped me on the shoulder. You killed it, he said, grinning. Claire chimed in. Yeah, you were. Okay, she smirked. But you talk with your hands too much. It was kind of distracting. I laughed it off, but inside, her words cut deeper than any criticism from a stranger ever could.
That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the image of her face in the audience. The absence of pride. The flicker of something else. Something darker. And for the first time, I wondered, what if Mark was right? What if Claire wasn't rooting for me at all? I didn't know it then, but those doubts were just the beginning. Because soon, Claire's small cuts would turn into wounds I couldn't ignore. And the girl I called my sister would become the very person who tore my world apart. Looking back now, I realize betrayal doesn't strike all at once. It seeps in slowly, like water through a crack in the ceiling, silent at first, until suddenly your whole house is flooded. That's what it felt like with Claire. After the regionals, things started to shift. Subtly, but enough for me to feel it deep in my bones. She grew sharper with me. Little digs slipped into every conversation. You're so lucky they liked your speech, she'd say. Honestly, if I tried, I'd probably do better. But hey, you got your moment. Sometimes she disguised it as advice. You really should work on your voice projection. It's kind of weak. Other times it was just cruel. Don't wear that dress. It makes you look like you're trying too hard. And I laughed. Every time I laughed. Because what else could I do? If I got defensive, she'd call me sensitive. If I stayed silent, she'd smirk like she'd won something. But inside, Each word felt like a needle sliding under my skin. Mark noticed. He always noticed. One afternoon, we were sitting on the bleachers after class, watching the sky turn pink over the football field. I was quiet, hugging my knees. He nudged me gently. "She's doing it again, isn't she?" I sighed. "She's just joking." Mark shook his head. "Friends don't joke at your expense."
Not like that.
I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. "She doesn't mean it. She loves me. She's just blunt." Mark stared at me for a long moment, his eyes soft but firm. "You're defending someone who's hurting you." And I hated him for saying it. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was. The real cracks began to show at school. Suddenly, whispers followed me in the hallways. People I barely knew gave me pitying looks. I couldn't figure out why, until one day, I overheard two girls in the bathroom. "She only got picked because the teacher felt sorry for her," one of them whispered. Claire told me. My stomach dropped.
Claire. She was spreading things about me.
Ugly things.
Lies.
Things I hadn't even imagined someone who called themselves my best friend could say. I confronted her that night. We were in my room, sitting cross-legged on the bed like we had since middle school. I could barely get the words out. "Why would you tell people I didn't deserve the regionals?" She blinked innocently. "What?" "I didn't say that." "I heard them. They said you told them." Claire rolled her eyes. "Wow, so now you're believing random gossip over me? After everything?" I froze. The way she said it, so offended, so wounded, made me feel like I was the one in the wrong.
I'm
sorry," I whispered. I don't know." She leaned forward, squeezing my hand. Her nails dug into my skin. "Don't let people get in your head. You know I'd never hurt you." And I wanted so badly to believe her that I ignored the pit in my stomach screaming otherwise. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder. Suddenly, people laughed when I walked by, snickered behind my back. Someone even taped a note to my locker. Fake. I ripped it down with shaking hands, my vision blurring with tears. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the crumpled paper in my fist. My whole chest hurt, like someone had filled it with broken glass. And in the middle of it all, one thought circled endlessly. Why would she do this to me? One Friday evening, I finally broke down in front of Mark. We were walking home, the streetlights glowing faintly above us. "I don't get it," I choked, tears streaming down my face. "What did I do wrong? Why is she doing this?" Mark stopped walking, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "You didn't do anything wrong. That's the thing. Some people, they just can't stand to see someone else shine." I shook my head. "But she's my best friend. She's supposed to be happy for me." His voice softened. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who envy us the most." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream at him for saying it. But deep down, I knew he was right. The worst part wasn't the lies or the whispers. It was the loneliness. Claire started pulling away, spending more time with others. And when she was with me, it was different. She wasn't warm anymore. She wasn't safe. She was sharp edges and cold stares. I would lie awake at night, clutching my pillow, replaying every moment of our friendship, every secret I'd told her, every laugh we'd shared. And now, those same memories felt poisoned. It was like grieving someone who was still alive. The final blow came during class one morning. We had to present group projects. I stood in front of everyone, explaining our research, my hands trembling slightly. When I finished, there was polite applause. But then, laughter. I turned to see Claire smirking, whispering something to the girl beside her. The girl giggled loudly, covering her mouth. Heat rushed to my face. My throat closed. Suddenly, every eye in the room felt like it was burning into me. I stumbled back to my seat, my hands shaking. Claire leaned over and whispered, just for me,
Relax. Don't be so dramatic.
it was just a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a knife. That night, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were hollow, my smile gone. I whispered out loud, like a confession. I think she hates me. And the scariest part was, maybe she always had. I thought it couldn't get worse. That maybe if I just held on, things would go back to how they used to be. But I was wrong. Because soon, Claire's betrayal would stop being whispers and jokes. It would become something much bigger, something that would break me in ways I never imagined. I remember the night as if it's carved into my skin. The air was heavy with the smell of cheap wine and too much perfume. Claire had insisted on throwing a small gathering at her apartment. Just a few close friends, she had said, smiling that disarming smile that once felt like home to me. I should have known. I should have read the warning in her eyes. But I was still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong about her. The apartment was warm, filled with laughter and chatter. Music pulsed softly in the background, the kind of music that's supposed to make you relax. But all it did was tighten the knot in my chest. I noticed how people's eyes flickered toward me, then away, as if I was carrying something contagious. Whispers darted like shadows across the room. Claire poured me a glass of wine. Relax, she said, pressing it into my hand. Her touch felt colder than the glass. Why do I feel like everyone's staring at me? I whispered. She tilted her head, her smile widening in a way that almost looked cruel. Oh, don't be paranoid. Everyone loves you. Her words didn't match the way she looked at me. Then it happened. Someone, Michael, a mutual friend, cleared his throat awkwardly. So, is it true? The whole room fell into a strange silence. My heart dropped. Is what true? I asked. Michael glanced nervously at Claire before continuing. That you've been saying things. About us. About everyone here. My breath caught.
What? No.
Claire interrupted, her voice dripping with false innocence. I didn't want to bring it up tonight, but you should probably just admit it. Admit what? I demanded, heat rushing to my face. She looked at me with mock sadness. That you've been telling people things I confided in you. Personal things. And that you've been talking behind their backs. Everyone knows now. It felt like the ground was pulled from under me. My legs trembled, my grip on the wine glass, so tight I thought it might shatter. That's a lie, I said, my voice breaking. I never, Claire, you know I'd never do that. She shrugged, her eyes cold, her tone calm, too calm. Then why have 3 different people told me the same story? They all heard it from you. I looked around the room. Faces I once trusted now stared at me with suspicion, some with open disdain. My stomach twisted. I could barely breathe. Michael shook his head. I thought you were different. He walked away. Others followed. One by one, the room shifted away from me, like a tide retreating from the shore. And Claire stood there, watching me drown. I whispered, almost pleading, "Why are you doing this?" Her lips curved into the faintest smirk, so subtle, I thought I imagined it. She leaned in, close enough that only I could hear. Because it's easy. And because you trusted me too much. Something inside me cracked. The laughter, the whispers, the glances. They all became knives. My chest burned with humiliation. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. I placed the untouched wine glass on the table, my hand trembling. I need air, I muttered, pushing past her. Outside, the night was cold, sharp, and merciless. My breath came in ragged gasps. I wanted to scream, to claw the betrayal out of my skin. Instead, I stood frozen under the flickering streetlight, shaking, hearing her voice echo in my head. Because it's easy. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. Claire hadn't just betrayed me. She had destroyed the version of me that trusted blindly, that believed friendship was sacred. And maybe that was exactly what she wanted. But the story didn't end there. Because the night Claire broke me was also the night I began to rise. The days after that night felt like walking through ashes. Everything smelled of smoke, even though there had been no fire. But there had been one inside me, and it left nothing but ruin. I didn't leave my apartment for 3 days. The curtains stayed shut, the silence thick, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car outside. My phone lit up over and over, but I couldn't bring myself to look. Messages poured in, some from people demanding explanations, others filled with silence that spoke louder than words. The worst part? Not a single call came from Claire. I thought about her constantly, about the way she looked at me that night, calm, calculating, victorious. I replayed her words until they hollowed me out. Because it's easy. And because you trusted me too much. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how long it would take before the world forgot me. Before my name stopped being passed around like a cheap rumor. On the 4th day, I forced myself to check my phone. Big mistake. There it was. A group chat I had once lived in, dozens of people, shared jokes, late-night confessions, love, and support. Now it was a graveyard and my name was etched on the tombstone. Claire had written, "I wish I didn't have to say this, but please be careful what you share. Some people can't be trusted with your secrets." The replies came like daggers. Wow, that's disappointing. Never thought they'd be like that. Guess we didn't really know them at all. Not one person asked me for my side of the story. I dropped the phone on the bed and buried my face in my hands. My chest ached so much it felt physical, like something was crushing me from the inside. I whispered to the empty room. I didn't do it. I didn't. But the walls didn't answer. When I finally went outside, I felt like a ghost. People I used to smile at in the cafe now looked away. Friends who once hugged me crossed the street instead. My world shrank to shadows, and I couldn't tell if it was the world that changed or just me. One afternoon, I ran into Michael, the same friend who had confronted me at the party. I almost turned and fled, but he saw me first. His face was unreadable. "Hey," he said flatly. I forced a smile. "Hey." There was an awkward silence. Then he sighed. "Look, I don't know what to believe anymore." But Claire swore she saw the proof. She wouldn't make that up. My throat tightened. "Proof? What proof?" He shrugged. "Messages. Screenshots. Stuff you supposedly wrote about us." It felt like the ground shifted under my feet. Screenshots? I had never written anything like that. But of course Claire would find a way. "She showed you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Yeah," Michael said, looking away. "And honestly, it sounded like your tone."
I'm sorry.
He didn't wait for my answer. He just walked away. I stood frozen, my hands trembling, anger boiling under my grief. That was when it hit me. Claire hadn't just spread rumors. She had manufactured them. She had forged my voice, my words, my trust, and used them as weapons. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was an art form. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur into tears. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, someone hollow, someone broken. But beneath the wreckage, a spark flickered. A tiny, dangerous thought. If Claire could burn me down so easily, what was stopping me from rising again? I whispered into the darkness, as if making a vow. "You won't erase me. You won't." For the first time in weeks, I felt something new. Not peace, not forgiveness, but fire. The kind of fire that can either consume you or forge you into something stronger. And deep down, I knew scene 6 of my story was already waiting, the moment I decided to stop being the victim and start being the survivor. The night I whispered, "You won't erase me," was the night something shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost imperceptible, like the faint crack of ice before it breaks. But I felt it. I had spent weeks drowning in shame, fear, and silence. Every time I heard Claire's name, my stomach twisted. Every time my phone buzzed, I froze, terrified of another blade disguised as a message. But that night, something inside me refused to stay silent. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, but also a strange clarity. I opened the curtains for the first time in days. The sunlight hurt my eyes, but I forced myself to look,
To see.
to exist. I made coffee, sat at the table, and stared at the steam rising from the cup. My reflection in the dark liquid looked tired, yes, but also alive. And that was enough. I picked up my notebook. It had been gathering dust, abandoned during the storm of humiliation. I opened it, and on the first blank page, I wrote a single word in big, uneven letters. Truth. That was the moment I decided. If Claire had stolen my voice, I would take it back.
At first, I didn't know how.
I mean, where do you even start when your world has been shattered? But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep hiding. So I called Emma. Emma had been silent since the betrayal. She hadn't defended me, hadn't attacked me either. Just silence. And silence, I realized, can sometimes hurt more than words. The phone rang twice before she answered. Her voice was cautious. "Hello." "Emma, it's me." A pause. Then a sigh. "I wasn't sure you'd ever call." "I wasn't sure either," I admitted, my throat tightening. "But I need to talk."
Please.
"Just meet me." There was a long hesitation, and for a moment I thought she'd say no. But finally, "Okay."
Tomorrow.
The cafe on 5th noon. I almost cried from relief. The next day, I walked into the cafe with trembling hands. Emma was already there, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. She looked up when I approached, her expression unreadable. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." I sat down, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. There was silence between us, thick and awkward. Finally, I broke it. "Emma, did Claire tell you too?" She nodded slowly.
She showed me things.
"Messages. Said you'd been talking about us behind our backs." I didn't want to believe it, but she trailed off, looking down. "Emma," I whispered, leaning forward. "I never wrote those messages. Not a single word. She forged them. You have to believe me." Her eyes searched mine. "But why would she do that? Why would Claire, your best friend, go that far?" I swallowed hard. Because betrayal isn't about logic. It's about control. She wanted to break me. And she did almost. Emma blinked, her face softening. "You really didn't write them?" "No," my voice cracked. "I swear on everything. Emma, she betrayed me. And I need to prove it." For the first time in weeks, someone believed me, or at least wanted to. I saw it in her eyes. Doubt, but also hope. She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. "Then I'll help you." Those 4 words lit something inside me. A light in the ashes. Over the next days, Emma and I started digging. Old conversations, shared files, inconsistencies in Claire's proof. We discovered small cracks in her story, timestamps that didn't match, screenshots that looked suspiciously edited. Every discovery felt like oxygen, like breathing again after weeks underwater. But it wasn't just about exposing Claire anymore. It was about reclaiming me. I started journaling every night, pouring my thoughts, my rage, my grief onto paper. I forced myself to leave the apartment, to walk, to look strangers in the eye again. Slowly, my voice returned, and with it came a realization. Claire had taken so much from me. My trust, my reputation, my peace. But she hadn't taken the one thing she couldn't touch, my strength to rise again. One evening, Emma and I sat with my notebook spread open, pages full of notes and evidence. She looked at me and smiled faintly. "You're different," she said.
How? I asked.
"Before, you were broken. Now you're burning." Her words gave me chills. Because she was right. I wasn't the same person who had collapsed under Claire's betrayal. I was becoming someone else. Someone forged in fire. That night, staring at the city lights, I realized something important. Forgiveness was impossible. And maybe unnecessary. What I needed wasn't to forgive Claire. It was to free myself from her. And I would. Because this story wasn't ending with my ruin. It was building towards something bigger. Something louder.
The truth was waiting.
And I was ready to speak it. I hadn't slept all night. The weight of the past weeks pressed on me like a stone in my chest. Every whispered conversation, every smirk I'd ignored, every little sign I'd brushed off as paranoia, it all led me here, standing outside Claire's apartment door, my hand trembling as I raised it to knock. My heartbeat was a drum in my ears, loud enough that I was sure she'd hear it on the other side. I'd rehearsed my words countless times, each version harsher, more controlled, more devastating, but now that I was here, the rehearsals crumbled. I just wanted to know, to face her, to see the truth in her eyes. The door clicked open before I could knock. Claire stood there, casual, sipping coffee, the sunlight catching in her hair in a way that used to make me feel warm. Now it made my stomach twist. "You came," she said, raising an eyebrow. There was no warmth in her voice, just curiosity.
As if she were expecting me.
"I need to talk to you," I said, voice steady but tight, like a wire stretched to its limit. She tilted her head, studying me, amusement flickering in her eyes. "About what?" "About us," I said, stepping inside, my shoes clicking against her polished hardwood floors. "About everything." Claire laughed softly, that infuriating laugh I used to love. "Everything? That's a big word." I swallowed hard, feeling the tears threatening behind my eyes. "I found out, Claire. I know what you've been doing. I know about the things you said, the things you planned, and I need you to explain." Her smile didn't waver. She set her coffee down, crossing her arms. "Oh, I think you might be overreacting. You always get so intense." I felt my chest tighten, rage bubbling beneath the fear. "Overreacting? Claire, I have texts, emails, witnesses. You laughed at me while plotting my ruin. How is that overreacting?" Her gaze flickered for just a moment, a shadow of something. Maybe guilt, maybe fear. But then she smoothed it away. "I don't know what you're talking about." I stepped closer, my hands shaking despite myself. "Don't lie to me. I trusted you. I considered you family. And you used everything I told you against me. Everything I was vulnerable about, you weaponized it. You. And now you're here, confronting me." "That's dramatic," she interrupted, voice cool. "You're always dramatic. Always thinking the world is out to get you." My throat tightened, and I had to swallow. "Do you even hear yourself? I'm standing here, my life, my reputation, maybe my career, ruined by someone I loved, and you call me dramatic." She laughed again, low and soft, but I noticed the tremor beneath it. "I never meant to hurt you. Well, maybe a little. But you've always been too sensitive." I felt a surge of disbelief and anger. Too sensitive? I'd spent years pouring my heart out to her, supporting her through heartbreak, celebrating her successes, and she considered me too sensitive for noticing when she stabbed me in the back? You used me, I said, voice breaking, and you smiled while doing it. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To think someone you love is your friend, and find out they were planning your downfall. Her eyes darted away for a fraction of a second. That flicker, it was enough. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. I took a step closer, my chest heaving. Didn't mean for it to go that far? Claire, you manipulated people, spread lies about me, humiliated me in ways I can't even put into words. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't fight back? She flinched, just slightly, like a cornered animal. You're making it worse than it was. You're twisting things. No, I said, my voice gaining strength, shaking but relentless. You made it this far. You chose this path. And now it's my turn to tell the story. Her mouth opened, closed, and opened again, words failing her. I could see the recognition in her eyes, the guilt, the fear, but she tried to hide it. She always did. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy between us. I could feel every pulse in my body, every tear threatening to fall, every heartbeat loud and raw. I trusted you, I whispered, not just to her but to myself. And I was wrong, but I'm not letting it break me. Not anymore.
She didn't speak.
She didn't move, just watched, her face a mask that couldn't fully hide the panic. You know, I continued, softer now, I wanted to hate you completely. I wanted to scream, to cry, to destroy everything you love. But part of me still remembers why we were friends. And that part is the hardest to reconcile. She finally looked away, tears brimming in her eyes now, betraying her cool exterior. I didn't think you'd find out. I never thought. I did, I said. And I survived it. You don't get to have this power over me anymore. I stepped back, breathing heavily, and saw her shrink slightly in the corner of the room, vulnerable, human, just for a moment. I realized then that the Claire I loved, or thought I loved, was gone, replaced by someone capable of unimaginable betrayal. For a long moment, we just stood there. The quiet was deafening. I felt exhaustion seep into my bones, the kind of exhaustion that comes not from physical exertion, but from surviving emotional warfare. I don't know what happens next, I said finally, voice trembling but firm. I don't know if you can fix this, or if I even want you to. But I know I can't go back to how things were. And you need to live with what you've done. She nodded slightly, no words. And in that silence, I understood something profound. The story wasn't over. Not for me. Not for her. I turned toward the door, each step heavy, deliberate. My hand reached for the knob, and I felt a strange calm amidst the storm inside me. This confrontation, this confession, this raw exposure of truth, it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of my reclaiming myself. And as I stepped out into the sunlight, leaving Claire's apartment behind, I realized something I hadn't known in months. I was free. Free from her manipulation, free from her lies, free to rebuild the pieces of me she had tried to destroy. But one thought lingered, icy and sharp. Some stories don't end neatly. Some betrayals leave scars that last a lifetime. And mine had just begun to surface.